You may never feel as happy as you did when you were a 7-year-old child, ever again. But you can be 99% as happy as that. Recently I thought of a memory I had when I was about 5 years old. Our friends from up north had just come down and they were staying the night. I woke up early at around 7 a.m. before my parents were up, and I went downstairs to the sofa bed where they were sleeping. I had my family friend Jack, who was 2 years older than me, under the covers playing his DS. So I went to the bed and watched him play. Now at this point I didn't have my own DS, so I got all my enjoyment from watching others who had their own games play, and man did I just feel pure bliss. That was enough. That was all I needed to be happy when I was a 5-year-old kid. Now, as a 20-year-old man, it's impossible to feel that same pleasure as I did back then. I even tried to go back to that moment when I picked up my old 3DS and I played the very first video game I ever got, Lego Batman, for my 7th birthday. And in the first 10 minutes, I felt pretty good. I was back in the level, I saw the mini kit canisters, I saw the items, I saw the characters, I started a new file, and I realised I had to grind a bit in order to unlock the characters I had before from my old file. I still had it, but the fun's in starting with nothing and earning it as you go through the game. That's the allure of video game. Now when I was 7, I knew nothing else. It was so mysterious, it was so alluring. I just wanted to adventure. Playing your first video game, you go in with no expectations as you have no other video games to compare it to. So I went in there and I thought it was the best thing in the world. Going through, walking in acid, finding out that certain characters can go in it and some characters will die. It was amazing. I thought it was peak game design. But when I went back to it at age 20, it just didn't hit the same, because in that time, I'd stimulated myself with 100 other video games from which to compare, and Lego Batman just kinda sucked. But even though its controls may have not played as well, it still had a certain charm that reminded me of my childhood. And growing up, you kind of outgrow these things a bit. I mean, there are still some adult series that really suit my needs, and to this day I really love the Xenoblade Chronicles series, which I first played when I was 17. But the old games back then, which provided me with literally the happiest moments of my life, some memories that I'll cherish forever, those games just don't hit the same anymore, and I realise whatever I do, I won't be as happy as I did back then. Sometimes I wonder why I was so happy when I was a kid. I think it was just the innocence of not knowing. When you're 7 years old, your brain is far from fully developed, and it's like a mound of clay ready to be moulded into the adult brain. And at that point, anything can shape it. Now those memories of playing Lego Batman on the DS moulded my brain in a way where part of my brain formed to hold that memory so dear to my heart, and I remembered it very fondly. But now my brain is a bit more solidified and it's harder to mold and change. This is why when I was like 7 or 8 years old, I used to tell like teenagers who were like 16, 17, 18, oh, I want to be an adult, you're adult size now, or even parents, and I would always get the same response. And you know what that is? Of course you do. I wish I could be a child again. And now that I'm an adult, I see and recognize the meaning of that sentence, and I'm like, wow, they were right all along. When I was a child, I had no responsibilities. Yes, I had to take orders from my parents, I had to do what they say. I couldn't have my devices for all that long in the day. Maybe for a whole car ride, I'd get it for maximum 3 hours, or even longer if we drove for that long. But we weren't allowed it much at home because, well, it's time to go swimming, it's time to go to football, it's time to eat. No devices were allowed at the dinner table, and that rule still holds today. But sometimes my siblings or I might break it, or they're more likely to break it than me, but don't tell them. And I realised what made me happy back then was not the freedom to do what I want, but the innocence and the peace of mind of being a young child, the feeling of not knowing what's to come, the feeling of having a superior authority figure who would tell you what to do and what not to do, and tell you when you were wrong. Life was in their control, not yours. But it felt somewhat comforting to take instructions and obey my parents. Now that I'm an adult, I must behave differently in order to not let my own life fall into despair and the responsibilities of an adult take over. Now yes, that time may have passed for me to enjoy my simple pleasures like my DS, but I know there are ways I can get 99% of the happiness as I did back then, maybe not quite 100%, and that is by experiencing a new environment, distraction-free, away from technology, where you're present in the moment, of a new country, a new park. Even in the very lands of England itself, I have not gone to 90% of places in England, despite living here. I guess we don't adventure that much, even in our own countries. We love to go away though, fly over to Ibiza, Barcelona, Madrid, Paris, or most recently, I went to Madeira and I did canyoning. And as I leaned over the edge and descended my first 60-meter cliff ever, I felt like a young child again. I had harnessed my inner child and I was yelling as I was descending that cliff, although nervous at the same time. That adrenaline rush gave me that same kind of feeling that I felt when I first played my DS all those years ago. And in that moment, I experienced what it was like to feel like a child again. So I believe an action step you can take to experience that kind of pleasure or excitement is to go out there and go on an adventure yourself, which pushes you to your limits, which pushes you into unknown territory, which makes you nervous but excited at the same time. And then you can feel that same feeling you felt as a child all over again. I hope you evoke your inner child and experience these amazing adrenaline rushing activities once more. You can bring back the good time. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next video.